The rooftop bar at the Fairmont Hotel was buzzing that night, full of young associates flashing firm credit cards and older partners pretending not to check their watches. The air was thick with Texas heat, even after sunset, and the skyline glowed with a soft orange haze. Jason, my ex-husband, sat across from me, his new wife beside him, laughing too loudly at some half-finished story. He looked every bit the rising star of Blake and Rowe. Charcoal suit, tie knotted just so. The confidence of a man who believed the city belonged to him. And then I slid a small white card across the table. Claire Carter, CEO, Solar Grid Systems. For a moment, the only sound was the clink of ice against glass. Jason's eyes darted down, blinked, then back up at me, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something safer. His wife, Savannah, daughter of one of the senior partners. Mid-smile, her manicured fingers tightening on her champagne flute. "You," Jason stammered, his voice cracking just enough to betray him. "You're the founder of Solar Grid. That's impossible." I let him squirm for a beat before answering. "Not impossible. Just true." His throat worked like he was swallowing gravel. "But Solar Grid, they just acquired Hanover Energy's software division. That's..." He trailed off, eyes wide. "That's me," I said softly. "My company." Savannah's smile faltered, and the silence between us grew so heavy I thought it might bend the table. Around us, life went on, laughter, music drifting up from 6th Street. Waiters balancing trays, but inside our little circle, time slowed to the moment I had waited 3 years to see. "You should come out to the ranch sometime," I added, casually, though my pulse thundered. "We're hosting a housewarming. Hill country views, space for everyone. The guest house is about the size of your Westlake place." I shouldn't have enjoyed the flicker in Jason's eyes, but I did. His pride, once the cornerstone of my life, was cracking, and I was the one holding the hammer. Savannah tried to recover, brushing invisible crumbs from her silk dress. "Well, isn't that impressive?" she murmured, her tone brittle. But Jason didn't move. He sat rigid, staring at the card like it was evidence of a crime. And in a way, it was. Proof that the woman he'd discarded, the one he'd written off as too small, too suburban, too comfortable, had built something bigger than his ambition could grasp. I took a slow sip of my drink, savoring the cool bite of gin. "It's funny," I said. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this moment. But then again, 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined a lot of things. And just like that, the memory tugged me backward to the night everything shattered. 3 years earlier, I was still Mrs. Jason Monroe, living in a 2-story house in Westlake, with a manicured lawn and a mortgage tucked safely under his firm's trust. From the outside, it looked like success. Dinner parties for partners, wine, club memberships, vacations we couldn't quite afford but charged anyway because image was everything. But the cracks were already there. I remember the holiday gala at the Four Seasons. The first time I felt the ground shift. I had spent weeks prepping perfect dress, the right talking points about Jason's projects. I was in the restroom, reapplying lipstick, when 2 younger associates' wives walked in. They didn't see me in the stall. "Savannah's been everywhere with Jason," one whispered. "She's stunning and her family practically runs the firm." "Poor Claire," the other replied. "Still hosting PTA fundraisers while her husband moves on." Their laughter sliced through me. I stepped out, smiled as if I hadn't heard. But my reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. That night, I asked Jason casually, "Who's Savannah?" He kissed my cheek. "Just a colleague. Don't be paranoid." I wanted to believe him. "God help me," I did. The truth came months later, not in a confession but in paperwork. A receipt from Kendra Scott, a diamond bracelet I'd never seen. The date. Our anniversary. I tucked it into my desk drawer, told myself maybe it was for his mother. Maybe it was for me. Later. Denial is a powerful drug. Then came the night he stumbled in at 2 a.m., reeking of perfume that wasn't mine. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. I saw the message flash. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for Napa next weekend. She still doesn't suspect. My chest hollowed out, and I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling. In the morning, I asked, "Who is she?" Jason exhaled like he was relieved. "Her name is Savannah. She gets me, Claire. She's ambitious, connected. You've been comfortable hosting bake sales while she's building a future." I felt my 15 years with him condense into ash. The divorce was fast, efficient, and brutal. His lawyer slid the prenup across a polished table. I'd signed it in grad school, when I thought we're a team meant something. Turns out, it meant I was replaceable. "You'll get a reasonable settlement," his attorney said. "Reasonable?" I repeated. "Or just enough to keep me quiet." He looked away. Even he knew the answer. When it was over, I packed my life into cardboard boxes. I left behind the furniture we'd chosen, the houseplants I'd nursed, the photo albums filled with curated smiles. Jason kept them all, like props in a play where my role had been written out. My new home was a one-bedroom apartment off Burnett Road. The carpet smelled faintly of mildew. The fridge hummed like it was struggling to stay alive. On my first night there, I ate ramen at a folding table, surrounded by boxers, and tried not to cry. But the silence pressed in, reminding me of everything I'd lost: status, security, the illusion of being chosen. Friends texted at first. "How are you holding up? Drinks soon." But invitations dwindled. I was no longer useful at charity events. No longer Mrs. Monroe of Westlake. Just Claire, the discarded wife. One by one, the lifelines frayed. I leaned on my mom over the phone. She told me, "Baby, men leave, but your mind is yours. Use it." Her faith in me was a thread I clung to in the dark. But Jason's voice echoed louder. "You'll never make it without me, alone in that apartment, with settlement money. That would stretch maybe 2 years if I was frugal." I started to believe him. Until one morning, hunched over my chipped mug of coffee, I pulled up the business plan I'd written in grad school. SolarGrid.a platform, connecting homeowners with affordable, community-based solar solutions. A dream I'd shelved for Jason's career, waiting for the right time. There, in that dingy apartment, surrounded by boxers and failure, I realized the right time was now or never. I didn't leap into action overnight. At first, I sat paralyzed, staring at that old business plan glowing on my laptop screen. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. Who was I kidding? I was 42, freshly divorced, with a resume full of supporting my husband's career. What bank would lend to me? What investor would trust me? But then I remembered something Mom used to say. "Always keep a drawer of secrets, baby. Not lies, just seeds no one else knows about yet." And I had seeds. During the years, Jason paraded me around as his perfect wife. I'd kept freelancing in the shadows, small coding gigs, data integration projects, even building a billing platform for a friend's startup. Clients had cut checks in my name, deposited into an account Jason never knew about. Modest, yes, but enough to prove I wasn't just a suburban ornament, so I began gathering. First, documents. Every freelance invoice, Every email showing my contribution. Bank statements proving income. I scanned them all, uploaded to a secure drive. Not because I planned to sue Jason. I knew the prenup locked me out, but because I needed to remind myself I had built things. Second, finances. I opened a new bank account at a local credit union, one Jason couldn't touch. I froze my credit after reading horror stories about bitter exes racking up joint card debt. I pulled my credit report, circled the bruises, and promised myself I'd fix them. Third, housing. My lease on Burnett Road was short-term, and I knew the landlord wouldn't wait forever. So I met with property managers, asked blunt questions. What credit score do you require? How many months' rent up front? Their answers stung, but they also lit a fire. If I wanted stability, I had to create income fast. I started mapping solar grid in notebooks, sticky notes plastered across the walls. The idea wasn't just software, it was infrastructure. Austin's suburbs were filled with homeowners priced out of solar by bloated installation costs. What if they could pool resources, form microgrids, lease panels through a subscription model cheaper than their electric bills? Everywhere I looked, signs confirmed the timing was right. Rising utility rates, state incentives, homeowners posting on Nextdoor about unreliable grids after winter storms. The market needed a bridge, but passion wasn't enough. I needed proof, so I walked neighborhoods, knocked on doors with a clipboard, introduced myself as a researcher, not a founder. I asked, would you switch to solar if it cost less than your current bill? Most said yes. Some invited me in, poured coffee, told me about their frustration with outages. I wrote everything down. At night, I built prototypes on my laptop, basic dashboards showing cost savings, a calculator where users could input their monthly bill and see potential reductions. It was crude, but it looked like something real. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet online. I didn't post updates, didn't flaunt progress. Jason still followed me on LinkedIn, and I wanted him to think I was fading, surviving on scraps. Let him underestimate me. Isolation cut deep during those months. Friends had chosen sides, most picked Jason, dazzled by his Westlake lifestyle. My phone rarely buzzed. I spent nights eating takeout alone, code compiling on one screen while muted Netflix filled the silence. But in that solitude, resolve hardened. One night, when fatigue threatened to smother me, I pulled out the Kendra Scott receipt, the bracelet Jason bought Savannah for our anniversary. I taped it above my desk, a talisman of betrayal. Not to fuel bitterness, but to remind me what staying silent had cost me. Never again. I whispered it aloud like a vow the next morning. I opened a spreadsheet titled Roadmap, columns, funding, product, legal, launch. Rows, 6 months, 12 months, 18. I gave myself deadlines, real ones. By the end of the week, I had a name. Solar Grid Systems, not a dream, a plan. And for the first time since Jason left, I didn't feel discarded. I felt dangerous. The plan was alive, but I was drowning alone. SolarGrid couldn't just be sticky notes on my wall. It needed allies. I thought of Alexandra First, my college roommate turned VC in San Francisco, but calling her felt too big, too soon. Instead, I started local. That's how Tanya re-entered my life. We'd been PTA moms together years ago, both juggling carpools and bake sales. Tanya was the kind of woman who never met a stranger. I bumped into her at HEB one Sunday, carts colliding. Near the produce section. "Claire, girl, where have you been hiding?" she asked, her voice warm but cautious. She'd heard, of course everyone had. Divorce gossip travels faster than Wi-Fi in Austin's suburbs. I almost lied. Almost gave the automatic, "Oh, you know, just keeping busy." But something cracked. "Trying to build a company," I blurted. Her eyes widened. "A company? Tell me everything." Over coffee at her kitchen table, I spilled the story, SolarGrid, the model, the vision. She listened, arms folded, brow furrowed. Then she leaned forward. "You need me," she said simply. Tanya wasn't a coder, but she was lethal at sales. She'd run regional accounts for a telecom giant before stepping back for kids. Her contacts were still intact, her charm sharper than ever. "I can get you meetings," she promised. "Neighbors, small business owners, anyone curious about solar. Let me pitch them. You build the thing, I'll sell it." That night, I cried not from sadness, but relief. For the first time since Jason left, I wasn't carrying the load alone. Next came Ethan. He'd been one of Jason's associates at Blake and Roa, brilliant coder moonlighting as a paralegal, forever dismissed by the partners. I ran into him at a coffee shop downtown. His hoodie looked slept in, his laptop plastered with stickers. "Claire, wow, heard you. Had a rough patch." I bristled, then realized his tone wasn't pity, it was awkward admiration. We talked. He confessed he hated law, loved code, and was itching for a way out. I showed him the SolarGrid prototype. His eyes lit up. "This is legit," he said, tapping at my laptop. "You've built more than half the firms I've worked with." By the next week, he was on board, part-time at first, then full throttle. He coded like a man possessed, translating my messy sketches into sleek dashboards, and then there was Marisol. She wasn't a friend or a colleague but my landlord's cousin, a paralegal who helped part-time at the leasing office. I mentioned my startup dreams one day, and she leaned in, whispering, "You filed an LLC yet? Got liability coverage? Don't let anyone steal your IP." I shook my head, panicked. She slid a yellow sticky note across the desk. 3 names of lawyers she trusted. Call them, and Claire. Don't tell Jason a damn thing. Men like him love to find holes in paperwork. I called. By the end of the month, SolarGrid Systems was an LLC with a clean contract library. The montage of my life shifted. Bought morning runs with Tanya, rehearsing pitches between breaths. Late nights with Ethan, screens glowing, pizza boxes stacked high. Marisol dropping by with legal forms, wagging a finger until I signed. Little wins piled up. Tanya secured our first pilot. Customer local daycare center, tired of unpredictable energy bills. Ethan hacked together an early beta that showed real savings. I opened a P.O. box, got business cards, felt like a real CEO. For every door that closed, an ally held one open. Jason had Savannah's family name. I had Grittand now. A crew. We weren't polished, but we were moving. And I could feel it. The balance of power was shifting. We'd been grinding for months, heads down, living on coffee and borrowed faith. SolarGrid was more hope than revenue until the email landed in my inbox. Subject: City of Austin, RFP, Renewable Energy Solutions. A request for proposal. The city was looking for software to coordinate community solar programs. Budget: 7 figures. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. This was the kind of contract that could flip a startup from fragile to formidable. Tanya was the first person I called. "This is it," I whispered, pacing my apartment. "This is the chance." She didn't miss a beat. "Then we're going after it. Forget small pilots, this is our proving ground." The RFP was brutal, dozens of requirements, tight deadlines, technical certifications. Ethan groaned when I forwarded the document. "Claire, this is insane. We'd need 6 months minimum." "We have 6 weeks," I said firmly. He rubbed his eyes. "We'll need more developers." So we hired 2 contractors laid off from Dell, both hungry enough to work for equity. Suddenly, my tiny apartment was crammed with whiteboards, Ethernet cables snaking across the carpet, days blurred into nights. Tanya drafted pitch decks, while Ethan coded until his fingers cramped. I lived on energy drinks and the hum of possibility. But the real twist came when I flipped to the last page of the RFP Valuation Committee members. There it was. Jason Monroe, listed as an advisor, thanks to his firm's lobbying ties with the city. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My ex-husband, the man who'd dismissed me as comfortable, who left me for Savannah's pedigree, would be reviewing bids. Reviewing my bid. I laughed out loud, sharp and bitter. The universe has a sense of humor. Tanya smirked when I showed her. "Then let's give him a show he'll never forget." We doubled down. Ethan refined the prototype until it gleamed clean dashboards. Predictive analytics, cost savings, simulations. Tanya rehearsed pitches like a Broadway actress. I polished our financials, updated our cap table, made sure every line screamed credibility. On submission day, I hand-delivered the proposal to City Hall. Walking through those glass doors, I felt my spine lengthen. I wasn't the abandoned wife anymore. I was a contender. Weeks later, during the public presentation phase, I spotted him. Jason, sitting at the back of the chamber, arms folded, Savannah at his side. His eyes flicked up, widened when he saw me at the podium. "Good afternoon," I began, voice steady. "I'm Claire Carter, founder and CEO of Solar Grid Systems. We're here to show you how community solar can save Austin families real money." As slides clicked behind me, I caught his expression, a mix of disbelief and something darker. Recognition, for once. The power wasn't in his hands. When the Q&A ended, Savannah leaned in to whisper something, her lips tight. Jason's jaw worked. But he said nothing. I walked off that stage, taller than I'd ever been. Whether we won or not. One truth was undeniable. The balance had shifted. Winning a public contract, even making it to the finalist round, meant stepping into a labyrinth I hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, Solar Grid wasn't just my scrappy idea taped to a wall. It was a real company under a microscope. The first challenge was compliance. The city required liability insurance, cybersecurity certifications, background checks for every employee. My stomach dropped reading the checklist. "Claire, this is impossible," Ethan muttered, flipping through pages. "We're a 4-person startup running out of your apartment." "Not impossible," I said, though my voice shook. "Just expensive." So I called Marisol, the paralegal who'd once shoved sticky notes across a desk. She listened patiently, then rattled off steps. "File for the certifications. Even if you don't get them all in time, showing you started matters. And Claire, don't skimp on insurance. If anything goes wrong, they'll come for you first." It was terrifying. Signing papers, locking in premiums higher than my rent. My hand shook as I wrote the checks, but each signature felt like crossing a bridge I could never return from. Housing became another gauntlet. My lease was ending, and the landlord wanted a 25% increase. "Market rates," he shrugged. I toured apartments that smelled of fresh paint and desperation. Landlords asking for 3 months' rent up front. My credit score, battered by the divorce, got me polite rejections. Finally, I found a duplex in South Austin. The landlord, a retired electrician, listened as I explained splaner grid. He squinted, then said, "So you're building energy software. I've been yelling about the grid for years. I'll take a chance on you. Just pay on time." I signed that lease with tears in my eyes. It wasn't luxury, but it was stability. Meanwhile, the city's procurement office kept sending requests proof of payroll processes, diversity hiring plans, data storage compliance. I spent nights hunched over legalese, Googling acronyms, until my eyes blurred. One Friday, at 2 a.m., Ethan looked up from his screen. "Claire, why are we doing this? We could walk away, focus on smaller clients, save ourselves the ulcers." I stared at the stack of paperwork, at the sticky note with Jason's name on the committee. "Because, if we can survive this, no one can dismiss us again. Not Jason, not Savannah, not anyone." The bureaucracy was relentless, but so were we. Tanya hit the phones, calling every homeowner she knew, gathering testimonials. Ethan coded security patches until his laptop overheated. Marisol connected me with a lawyer who walked us through contract language. Warning: watch the indemnity clauses. Cities love to bury poison pills. I learned to read legal documents like X-researching for fractures, hidden risks. At the same time, I had to face logistics Jason had once handled for us as a couple. Health insurance, business taxes, quarterly filings. Each task felt like a mountain, but I climbed them one by one. The lowest point came when the city flagged our financials. "Your operating budget appears insufficient for a project of this scale," the email read. Translation: they didn't believe we could survive. I wanted to throw my laptop through the wall. Instead, I called Alexandra, the roommate-earned-VC. I'd been too scared to approach live. She said no one but her called me that. "Send me the deck. If it's solid, I'll rip it apart, then we'll rebuild." Her review was brutal. "Your projections are timid. Your revenue model undersells you. Claire, you're acting like someone still waiting for permission. Own this." By the end of the week, SolarGrid had a revamped financial model and a bridge loan from Alexandra's firm. Enough to prove solvency. Enough to keep us alive. The city advanced us to final consideration. But the process wasn't just technical. It was emotional. I was forced to confront how much I'd leaned on Jason. How many adult responsibilities I'd quietly ceded during our marriage. Filing taxes, negotiating contracts, even calling the bank had been his domain. Now, every phone call was mine. Every decision, every risk. And somewhere in that crucible, my fear began to morph into something else. Competence. I could feel it every time I signed a contract. Every time a clerk stamped approved in red ink. Every time I checked a requirement off the endless list. I wasn't just surviving bureaucracy. I was mastering it. The day of the final presentation arrived like a storm I'd been tracking for months. Austin City Hall. 9th floor conference room. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. A long oak table polished to sterile shine. Across it sat the evaluation committee, 3 council members, 2 energy consultants, and Jason Monroe, my ex-husband, looking far too comfortable in a tailored navy suit. Savannah perched beside him, pearls at her throat. Expression carefully neutral. I took my seat opposite them, Tanya and Ethan flanking me. My hands trembled under the table, but my voice came out steady. "Good morning. I'm Claire Carter, founder and CEO of SolarGrid Systems." Jason blinked. The title hung in the air like a thunderclap. CEO, a word he'd once told me I'd never wear. I began walking them through our solution: community-based solar, predictive analytics, cost savings, dashboards. Ethan handled the technical dive, Tanya the sales projections. My role was vision. And as I spoke, something shifted inside me. I wasn't begging for approval. I was offering them a future. Questions came hard and fast. How will you ensure cybersecurity? What about equity for low-income neighborhoods? How do you handle outages? I answered each calmly, drawing on months of preparation. My notes weren't even necessary. The knowledge lived in my bones, finally. A councilwoman turned to Jason. Mr. Monroe, you've worked in energy investments for years. Any thoughts? His mouth tightened. SolarGrid is ambitious, but they lack track record. Scaling this will be challenging. There it was. His attempt to undercut me, dressed in professional language. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes across the table. With respect, Mr. Monroe, I said evenly. Track record is how incumbents keep innovation locked out. Yes, we're new, but we're already running pilots in 3 neighborhoods. Families are saving 30% on bills. One daycare center avoided closing last month because of our platform. That's not theory. That's proof. Silence settled, heavy and electric. Jason's jaw flexed. Savannah glanced sideways at him, lips twitching, as if gauging how much control he was losing. I exhaled slowly, refusing to break eye contact. SolarGrid isn't about competing with legacy firms. It's about creating energy resilience for real people. Austin deserves more than business as usual. The chairwoman nodded. Thank you, Ms. Carter. That's very clear. The rest of the session blurred more technicalities, more numbers, but the moment had already happened. I'd faced Jason in the one arena he thought was exclusively his: power. And I hadn't flinched. When the committee adjourned, I gathered my notes, slid them into my leather folder. Jason rose too, crossing the room toward me. Claire, he said under his breath, his voice still carrying that patronizing lilt, you're playing a dangerous game. These projects aren't bake sales. They'll chew you up. I tilted my head, studying him. Funny, you said the same thing about marriage. His nostrils flared. Savannah touched his arm, a silent reminder they had an audience. I smiled faintly. Good luck with your advisorship. And with that, I walked out, heels clicking against marble, my allies at my side. In the elevator, Tanya let out a breath like she'd been holding it the entire meeting. Girl, the look on his face worth every sleepless night. Ethan grinned. Eyes bloodshot but alive. You didn't just hold your ground. You owned it. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Jason, in the conference room, standing stiffly. Savannah, whispering in his ear. The committee members already turning away from him to discuss the future I'd just laid on the table. And for the first time in years, I realized I no longer needed his recognition. I already had my own. The decision came faster than anyone expected. A week after our final presentation, the City of Austin announced SolarGrid as the selected vendor for its community solar initiative. Press releases went out. Local news stations ran segments. Austin startup wins, clean energy contract. Photos of me standing beside the mayor, shaking hands, flashed across TV screens. And there, buried in the coverage, a detail nobody missed. Jason Monroe had served on the advisory panel. Reporters swarmed him outside his office. Mr. Monroe, did you know the founder personally? Isn't it a conflict of interest that your ex-wife's company won? The questions cut sharper than I could have dreamed. Jason, cornered, tried to smile. We recused ourselves from scoring. The process was fair. But his tone was brittle, defensive. Savannah's perfect smile cracked in the photos, her pearl necklace gleaming like a noose. Meanwhile, SolarGrid's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Homeowners, small businesses, even school boards wanted in. Tanya nearly collapsed laughing when she opened her inbox. Claire, half of Travis County wants quotes. But the real reckoning unfolded online. A local blog ran a headline, "Left Behind Wife Builds Startup That Outshines Husband's Firm." The story spread like wildfire, screenshots flying across Facebook groups, LinkedIn feeds, even Twitter. Comments poured in, "Queen energy. Proof you should never underestimate a woman who's been underestimated for too long. Savannah must be choking on her pearls right now." I didn't post a word. I didn't need to. 2 days later, Jason called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice sounded tight, almost panicked. "Claire, we need to talk. This situation is spiraling. Call me back." I didn't, because the truth was, it wasn't my scandal. It was his. The public reckoning wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation. People finally saw what I'd always known. Jason built his image on the backs of others, and when the spotlight shifted, it illuminated the cracks. That weekend, Tanya dragged me to a neighborhood block party. Families I barely knew congratulated me between bites of brisket. Kids running under string lights. One dad clapped me on the shoulder. "Heard about SolarGrid. Damn proud to have a local company lead the way." For the first time in years, I felt something simple and powerful. Belonging. Jason had taken 15 years of my life and tried to erase me. But now, in front of neighbors and strangers alike, my story wasn't Jason's ex-wife, it was Claire Carter, CEO, and that shift, that was priceless. The Monday after the city announcement, my inbox was chaos: investors, reporters, potential partners. But in the quiet moments before sunrise, coffee in hand, the hum of Austin cicadas outside my duplex, I realized something deeper. I'd crossed a line. I wasn't fighting for survival anymore. I was steering a future. SolarGrid scaled fast. We hired a real office in East Austin, painted it with bright blues and greens. Whiteboards lined the walls, sticky notes blooming like wildflowers. Ethan finally upgraded from a folding chair to an actual ergonomic one. Tanya strutted around with a headset, landing deals like she was born for it. Every week brought new wins. A charter school signed up, then a string of grocery stores. Alexandra's firm closed a seed round, injecting enough capital to expand. For the first time in years, I slept without worrying whether my debit card would decline. But the most radical transformation wasn't financial. It was internal. I began saying no to Jason's texts that trickled in half warnings, half apologies. No to Savannah's indirect attempts at truce through mutual acquaintances. No to the temptation to measure myself against them anymore. Instead, I said yes to Saturday mornings at the Barton Creek Greenbelt, hiking with Tanya and her kids. Yes to late-night coding sprints that ended in tacos and laughter. Yes to therapy, where I finally unpacked years of silence, of being the supportive wife while my own dreams gathered dust. I bought a second-hand Jeep, the kind I'd once dreamed of road tripping in. Drove it out past Lake Travis, wind tangling my hair, music blasting. No destination, just proof that I could choose my own path. Slowly, I built a home that felt mine. Not a showcase like Jason and Savannah's gated estate, but warm. A mismatched quilt from my mom. Thrifted art that made me smile. A kitchen stocked with more than Chardonnay for his clients. One evening, my parents flew in from Denver. They hadn't seen me since the divorce's raw early days. When they stepped into my new place, my mom's eyes welled. "Claire," she whispered, "you look lighter." And I was at SolarGrid's 1-year anniversary. We threw a modest party on the rooftop of our office building. String lights, local beer, music humming from a Bluetooth speaker. My team clinked bottles, their laughter rising against the Austin skyline. As I stood there, I realized this was family too, chosen, not assigned. People who believed in me without needing me to disappear behind them. The rebirth wasn't just professional, it was personal. I started dating again gingerly, cautiously, not looking for rescue, not measuring worth by who held my hand at dinner parties. Just curious about connection. One man, a journalist who'd covered renewable energy, asked me on a picnic by Ladybird Lake. We talked more about books and travel than business. When he walked me back to my Jeep, I felt something unexpected, not butterflies, but calm. For once, calm was enough. Months rolled on. SolarGrid kept climbing pilot programs in Houston, interest from Dallas. Investors circled, eager to push us into Series A, but I kept my footing, remembering Alexandra's advice: own your story. Don't let the market write it for you. The biggest surprise came at Thanksgiving. My duplex was too small, so Tanya hosted. Her table overflowed turkey, stuffing, tamales, her mother's recipe. She raised a glass halfway through the meal. "To Claire," she said, eyes twinkling. "For proving that rebirth isn't just possible, lit can be electric." The room laughed, but my throat tightened. I hadn't realized how visible my journey had been to others. Later that night, washing dishes side by side, Tanya nudged me. "You ever think you'd be here a year ago?" I shook my head. "Back then, I thought my life ended with that marriage." She smirked. "Turns out, it was just the prequel." And she was right. The aftermath wasn't ashes, it was soil. And from it, something new had taken root. As the year closed, I wrote in my journal, not defined by betrayal, not chasing revenge, just living. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like victory. Asterisk, looking back now, I almost don't recognize the woman I was, the one who stayed quiet, who dimmed her own light so someone else could shine brighter. Today, my life isn't perfect, but it's mine. Every bill paid with money I earned. Every decision made because I chose it. Every laugh shared with people who see me as more than an accessory to someone else's story. Jason and Savannah. They've faded into the background noise of Austin society gossip. Their names no longer sting. They're just footnotes. What matters is this: I built something real out of rubble. And that's the part nobody can take away. But let me turn this to you. If someone you loved betrayed you, if they walked away for something shinier, richer, more impressive, would you fight to win them back? Or would you build a new life so solid that their opinion no longer mattered? I know which choice I made, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Before you go, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in my shoes? And if this story struck a chord, hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and share it with someone who might need the reminder. The end of one chapter can be the start of a better one. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't revenge, it's rebirth. Thank you.